Hello and welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
My name's Marty.
I'm Kevin.
And my name's Sam.
And this is our very first episode. So we're going to talk about the books that we've been reading over the past year as a book club. We're going to get into some graphic novels. We end off with some trivia. We really hope you enjoy this. So let's make our way over to the bridge. Marty, tell us about the book club, if you don't mind, and how we started. Can you do that?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I was just, I've been reading a lot of sci-fi for a long time, and I had certain friends in my life that talked sci-fi, and it's always a pleasure, as any sci-fi fan knows, to get together with someone else and like compare books and talk and geek out and And I just realized, me and Kevin had been talking about sci-fi books, and separately, and you, Tristan, we'd talked, lots of book talk when we got together. And it turns out Kevin lived right next door to Sam, who's also a sci-fi fan. And so the four of us ended up getting together on one fateful evening before COVID lockdown, just before.
Yeah, that was just before too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like the last meeting out at a pub, and we all just showed up and brought a backpack full of books and threw them out on the table and drank some beers, and it was, four times as fun talking books with four guys, as it was with one. And so it's super great to just meet people on the level who are interested in the themes and read a lot and like to have conversations. So we talked about books. We picked, I got to lead the first one, picked the book for the next month, which was The Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller, and we've been meeting once a month since then, all having read the same book. For me, I just love the fact, like, what a book is a piece of entertainment, of course, but I realize it's also a way of spending time in somebody else's head and sharing that time with other people. So, when you talk about a story and you've all read the same story, you've shared the same world and headspace and been somewhere together. It's like a way to journey with friends. So it's been a real pleasure getting to talk about books with these guys. And we all have very different interests and different tastes. Some of us like lots of the books, and some of us don't like some of the books, and we get to say what we mean, and it's really pushed all of our boundaries. I think we're all reading books we wouldn't have otherwise read, and learning things and seeing perspectives we wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise.
And it really helps to kind of make sense of things too. Like, I don't know how many times I've read a book and missed so much of it. And then I chat with people who do know about it. And then they say something and I'm saying, oh yeah, actually I never picked up on that. Or I never would have thought of it that way if you hadn't mentioned it that way. Or yeah, I completely forgot about that. So it's, the sense making that happens through conversation is actually really, something I've ignored pretty much my entire life. So it's pretty cool to have that.
Definitely, yeah.
I also find that you remember the books better, whatever it is, whatever you thought of a book, or I've read so many books in my life that I have no recollection of at all, and now I realize I know all these books that we've read together and talked about because we have conversations that reinforces memory. You see new things. It actually gets it out of just happening inside your brain alone. Once you speak something, have a conversation, remember, have the plot and a character name, and actually get them out into the outside world, they stick in a new way. And so this is a great way to, I think, actually retain the reading that we do and understand it and value it more.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. Kevin, do you have some news for us?
There's stuff going on. Now, some of it's not super timely or this week related, but I'd like to bring us back to Dune, and I want to talk about the movie. Because it was scheduled to be released in November 2020, but then of course it was pushed back to December of 2020 because of the pandemic. But then they decided that the market conditions weren't favorable enough to release a movie, which is quite reasonable and true. So they pushed it all the way out to October of 2021. And I wanted to get anybody's take on that. If anybody's seen the trailers, I don't know what you guys think about A, the movie, and B, the delay.
Well, I don't know if movie theaters are going to exist in 6 months. I don't know.
Right. That's true.
Aren't they tearing them all down? What's going on out there?
I know, seriously.
Yeah. And I think Wonder Woman sort of proved the model of a home release, and we rented it. We paid $30 and watched Wonder. I'd pay $35, to rent it on whatever streaming service. I think that's sort of the path forward. We're not sitting in movie theaters for at least another year right now. So to me, 2021, yeah, maybe like it's I don't know. I don't know that it matters. I'm not sure AMC is there, which is maybe timely for today as well. I mean, with all the Reddit stuff going on with AMC, but I'm not sure that they're there here for why. So why not just look at what happened with the Wonder Woman release and try to replicate that model?
Yeah,
Well,
and
I'm really happy that they're going to wait because I want to see it in the theater. Like, this looks like an
Yeah,
amazing
exactly.
movie that I'm super excited about, and they look like they're doing a great job. The cast, the style, the costuming, like all the trailers I've seen are really great. I mean, it's like something Dune fans have been waiting for their whole lives, and I really hope Villeneuve, and I have great faith that he'll do a great job of it. But I'd love to see it in the theater, and if it came out, this year, I'd probably miss it. So hey, good for them. Why not? I would love to see it at home too, obviously, and I'd probably, like you, Sam, like I did that with Wonder Woman 2, and I'm happy to get it at home while I have to get it at home. But I hope movie theaters will be around in a while, because especially for sci-fi movies, I want to see those things in the theater now. I'm willing to pay for that. Like, I see lots of stuff at home, and I can watch the Disneys and the TV and the serials and all that. But like once in a while, if there's some exciting sci-fi movie, Star Wars movie, or I want to see that stuff like with surround sound with big screen.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. The only movies that I've gone to see have been sci-fi movies. Ones I'm excited. I'll go to the theater, and just kind of take it in, because it is nice to have that experience often. Although oddly, when they release it on October 1st in 2021, it's apparently going to be a simultaneous release on HBO Max streaming service as well as theaters. So I don't understand if that's their approach. Maybe it might make sense to release it early, but maybe not.
I'm just impatient because they got me all excited and then they took it back. Like if they had said it was in post production and it's like going to be released in 2021, I wouldn't think anything of it. But they advertise, so damn it.
Well, I heard the James Bond movie, whatever the latest one is. It's now 2 years old. Like they delayed it. I don't know why. And then the pandemic came around, and that delayed it again. So now it's now 2 years out of date. And there's like Billie Eilish songs in there that are now seem kind of old, and they've actually had to update some of it because it's no longer timely.
Oh yeah, everyone's got to get new. They got to like edit in new, iPhones and that sort of thing now.
Exactly.
All the product placements have expired.
You know what? I think that's what it was. I think it was the product placement. I think that's what they had to take out. Do you guys remember when? And this is just, I think, one of those really cool stories. Science fiction, real world. Remember when Elon Musk was testing out for the first time the Falcon Heavy, and he launched his Tesla Roadster up into space?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they got, I have to think, these absolutely epic footage of the spaceman guy sitting inside the Tesla Roadster with the Earth in the background as he's slowly turning in space. Like that was one of those scenes that genuinely brought like tears to my eyes with how awesome it was. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm full on, I nerded out at that point. I thought it was just really cool.
I'm still nerding out with that stuff. I think it's great to see what he's doing.
It is. I wanted to find out what's going on with the Starman, the guy who's in the Roadster, and anyway, apparently that he's already done. He's working on his second orbit around the sun. So he went around once, and he's like 90% of the way around it again. And so they got him going really, really fast. And so he's gone something like 15, almost 16 AUs. Yeah, he's been out, and that was 3 years ago. So it doesn't seem like that long ago, but that was about 3 years ago.
My takeaway from that is that totally explains Elon Musk's like gigantic ego. He's like, you got a car
Oh,
like orbiting the freaking sun, you know? Like, I'd be a jerk too.
Well, that's the best marketing.
well, I
Yeah.
gotta say, Elon Musk has like provided maybe the only truly sci-fi moment of my adult life, for watching his rockets land again. Right? It was like, wow, okay, that's new, that's awesome, that's space tech. But he also provided the second one, which was this, Tesla Roadster in space. But I didn't, that was a ridiculous achievement. But it was kind of like a Douglas Adams level sci-fi achievement, where like I love
Yeah.
that. That is my kind of humor. That's hilarious, man.
Me too.
Yeah.
Let's put a car out there in space pretty much forever to just loop around.
Did anybody else kind of fist pump when you saw "Don't Panic" written on the dash of the Roadster?
He's a smart guy. He's gonna throw in some good humor.
Yeah, that was pretty
And
awesome.
have you guys heard of his I mean, this is also like a year old now, but they sold off all the tickets on the big freaking rocket, the BFR, to the highest bidder, and they picked from a bunch of projects. I think this is called the Luna project. So that in 2-3 years, like when this big rocket is ready, a single Japanese billionaire bought all 7 seats
What?
on that thing. And he's going to be on a launch, and he gets to give the other seats to the people of his choosing. And the people of his choosing are going to be artists. He was a rich enough, art enough guy that thought, like, well, what if we had Picasso in space, like back in the 60s, right? What if we had sent Michael Jackson to space? What would those artists have created when they got home? So he realized, like, he's the only person who could make this happen. Generally, space agencies don't send artists to space, so he's going to do it. So there's going to be, if it all goes according to plan, this group, he's going to choose, like, according to him, the 7 or 8 greatest artists in the world that are willing to go to space with him, and they're gonna get on the big BFR, the big freaking rocket, and go to. I think it's gonna be for its launch around the moon. So they're gonna like send these artists to the moon and document it and video and make movies and songs, and we'll see what happens when they all get home.
What an awesome idea.
That's a great idea.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah.
Send a poet, right? I mean, we got to send more poets to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Be able to articulate it well.
Well, Sam,
Yes.
what was your favorite book that we read this year?
My favorite book was Ancillary Justice. So this is about, this AI, but would exist within this Radich. I pronounce it Radish. I could be pronouncing it wrong. The Radchai civilization. They're an imperial race, and as they invade planets, they enslave a certain part of the populations, and they freeze them, and then those bodies become ancillaries for the AI of the ship. So the ship may have hundreds of these bodies that it can inhabit, and therefore do more of the work. And so it's this advanced intelligence, and the military, the army, and the fodder is made up of these sort of AI possessed bodies. And so it follows the journey of one ship as it gets caught up in the kind of intrigue of the Radchai imperial space opera, you could say. And so for me, it was really interesting because it's a story told through the eyes of an artificial intelligence that doesn't really worry about gender pronouns or a lot of the little hangups that we tend to get hung up on. It's a supreme pragmatist, you could say. And so its interpretation of the events it gets swept up in is for me really interesting, and it's a great way to challenge a lot of our cultural norms as well. So it's a great sort of device for challenging the way we think now, which I think is something I look for in a good sci-fi book. It's a nice space to experiment or demonstrate proof of concept. So
And I think
anyways, that was my favorite.
Everyone really liked this book, I think, too.
Yeah, I did. I know. I mean, I had read this before Sam got us to read it, and I had read the series, and I mean, there was some little bit of a slowdown, I think, later in the series, but the first book was excellent, and I just, like you said, Sam, this idea that you've got a human body that has a small part of what was formerly a very powerful AI is such a turnaround. Like, it is a story about an AI like a ship, but it is actually a human. And he, she, because we don't know the gendered pronouns, as you said, we don't know. This person is trying to contend with no longer being this extremely powerful entity, and that I thought was a really neat way to have a character in a book, like just very unique.
I mean, this book was really carried off very well. It was technically great. It was just sort of a mystery genre, right? That read really easily. It sort of kept you engaged, turning the pages, and it had this neat, like, literary device, right, or something new that we haven't seen before, where just all the pronouns are female, and it's. And you're right, like, it sort of drops you into this world, right? You're like, whoa, where am I? What's going on? Everybody's a her or a she. And then they explain that, oh, it's not that everybody's a she, it's just that I'm translating to you from some alien language that doesn't have differentiation between male and female. So we're just picking the female. And how refreshing, right, was that to just read a book all about apparently women, but then they sort of let you in at some point here and there. No, this guy's probably what you would consider male. This one's a female, but it sort of doesn't matter. And so it was a really new, right? Nobody's done that either. I think you're right, Sam, that I hadn't read that book before. It was a different kind of flavor. And it's interesting to reflect, right, that if they had just happened to tell exactly the same story and had used he's as all the pronouns, we would have taken this as a completely different story, a completely different book, with a completely different meaning. And it sort of, throws your the filter you view everything from right into your face.
Kevin, what was your favorite?
Well, it was difficult. When anybody ever asks me my favorite, I really have a very difficult time with that, because sometimes any book I'm reading becomes my favorite. With this rose-colored glasses thing, but I realized that a lot of the books I really like, as I was mentioning before, are about ideas, and so sometimes I kind of ignore perhaps the fact that it's not very approachable from a human perspective, or that the characters aren't extremely well developed. And I think sometimes I might actually just entirely ignore that it's not even well written, because I get into the story or the ideas. But the one that I picked was actually a short story, because I thought it kind of checked all those boxes. So I really liked it. It had a really neat idea. It was astoundingly well written, and the characters were really unique. And this was N.K. Jemisin's short story called "The City Born Great." And this is actually freely available on Tor.com if you Google "The City Born Great." And this was a 2016 short story that she wrote that became the basis of a 2020 novel called what is it called now? I think it's called "The City We Became."
Yeah,
and is that it? Yeah. Anyway, this short story is really good, and I recommend it to anybody. But it's about a homeless black kid living in New York, and he doesn't have much going on. He does a lot of graffiti on walls, but he sings. He sings to the city. The city talks to him, and sometimes when you drive into a city, or when you spend any time in a place like New York or Toronto or London, you kind of realize that the city itself is a living thing, and the subways are the veins that carry nutrients around, or people, or workers, and there's analogies to like organs in the body and stuff, being like Grand Central Station or what have you. But that's exactly what this is she takes that idea and she makes the city a character. So New York becomes a character, and this human character, this poor kid who's homeless, is actually the midwife helping the city give birth to itself. And you allude to how some cities are kind of failed cities, ones that have gone into decline, like Detroit or what have you, and those are ones that have stillbirthed, or they've not birthed properly. And so she took this story and made it pretty awesome, like talking about how if the city were to get into a fist fight, how would that be? Like, what would the city do, and how would you do that? And she humanized it in a really great way. She said, the city was getting into a fight with some bad guy, and he said, I backhanded its ass with Hoboken, rained the drunk rage of 10,000 dude bros down on it like the hammer of God. Port Authority makes an honorary New York motherfucker. You just got jerseyed. I just thought it was amazing. Like she writes really well. Like, she's won 3 Hugos, I believe, and so this short story was the first I've ever read of hers, and that was, it made me say, this is the first short story I've ever recommended to anybody. So, so I really enjoyed it, and she obviously is an astoundingly good writer. Because I really enjoyed the Broken Earth series. Yeah, I don't know what you guys, those of you who read it, what you guys thought of it.
I thought it was great. I don't have much to say about it beyond what you just said, but it was very entertaining. It was neat to read about a city that comes alive. I loved it.
I love this story. I mean, and I love everything N.K. Jemisin writes. I had read the Broken Earth trilogy before you recommended this, and this story, it's like it does exactly what she does so well in everything I've read by her. Right, she sort of is able to. It's almost fantasy writing, right? Like how does magic work, or what it would be like to be able to cause earthquakes, and this is kind of like, what would it be like if you could be the city, right? I was astounded by how much she did in how short a time. I mean, it's like a 10-page story, and she talks you through becoming a New York City and giving birth and being alive, and then takes you to Los Angeles, I think, at the end, just as the little twist. And I love it. I'm really looking forward to reading the novel that came from that short story.
Marty, what was your favorite?
Well, my favorite was the first one that we kicked off the book club on. It was Canticle for Leibowitz. This is a classic book from the 50s. It was recommended to me originally in my first year of undergrad by my math professor, before I was a real sci-fi guy, and I read it then, and I read it again maybe 10 years later, and I read it again, a year ago with you guys, and I've really enjoyed it every time. I get more out of this book every time I read it. It's a book in 3 parts. It's a post-apocalyptic scenario where basically there was a nuclear war, most of civilization was wiped out, and as people, the remains of people have sort of huddled together, survived for a few hundred or thousand years. They're starting to build civilization again. They find artifacts from, the ancient times, and they preserve them in the way that the church would sort of preserve ancient relics. And so this is a canticle for Saint Leibowitz. It's a story about an order of monks whose purpose is to preserve artifacts which turn out to be blueprints for electronics that happen to be signed by an engineer named Leibowitz. So the first part is this sort of account of the rise of civilization after the collapse of one, which I thought is very beautiful. It's very harsh. It's very human story. I find like the writing has a lot of poetic and sort of sort of human level, insightful things in it. But also scientifically, it's a really interesting book, because the second part is about sort of, he jumps forward maybe a few hundred years from the sort of monastic times to early scientific times. So now these scientists are rediscovering Newton's laws and electromagnetism and Maxwell's laws, and so you sort of get to see how they use old textbooks that have been preserved by this monastic order to take a leap forward and rediscover electromagnetism. And then the third part is they've sort of arrived at modern times again, and their nuclear threat, and it all goes horribly and sadly wrong again. It's kind of a grim book, I gotta say, by the third part. But I get a lot out of it every time. I think it's a very human story, and I just really enjoy the writing and the insights on the human level. What do you guys?
I love this. I think it was my second favorite if I had to put them in order.
It's interesting, right? It's like it's sci-fi that's in the future, but it's really kind of about the past. Everything about it is like reading a story about primitive peoples.
But that I think one of the strongest themes there is that the progress and regress of human civilization.
It's the Planet of the Apes genre of sci-fi, you could say.
A little
Right.
bit.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes without the apes.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
They're just
Yeah, I don't-
Catholics. You get there and they're just a bunch of Catholics.
That's right.
Yeah, humanity falls and the Catholics survive.
He had a neat idea related to that, though, right? Like if you wanted to maintain technological know-how, and you can't necessarily rely on technology to keep that technology going, make it into a religion and get it in the doctrine of a religion. I thought that was a really cool one that later came out in N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth series, right? And I thought that was a really cool way to do it. And it kind of made me think, is it, if you're going to try to propagate something through generations, what a great way. It's kind of like a societal DNA a little bit, right? You're able to store information through whatever gospel.
Cultural encoding.
Cultural encoding.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what great sci-fi can do, right? Is why this is such a great book, is that it makes you look at things that you've known and seen and had ideas about your whole life in a completely different light. Because then you think, oh, well, maybe that's what religion is, right? It's not what we think it is, right? These guys are completely wrong about the items that they're preserving, or even the reason that they should be preserved, because it's outside of their knowledge. It's outside of the possibility of what they could possibly understand. And so what if religion is exactly that, right? We are getting from some cultural encoding, maybe something, left to humans by advanced aliens long ago. And one day we'll be smart enough to figure out what it is we've been looking at all this time.
And talking about kind of laterally, right? We haven't been talking directly about it because, we don't have that knowledge. Maybe someday we will.
Yeah.
Who read the best book?
Oh,
I don't know who read the best book.
It's clear you chose the worst book.
Yeah, I think Sam would agree too. I don't think Sam was too fond of that one.
I would agree with you, Tristan. I really like that one. I didn't pick it because I thought you might pick it.
Yeah.
I lost the thread. Which book are we talking about?
Excision.
Well, if you want to go into mine here, my favorite book of the year that we read was Succession, Ian M. Banks.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. It was my first Banks book, and I'd seen it on a couple lists. So when Kevin recommended it, I was drawn to that one. I think you gave up. You said let's do one of these three maybe, and we all kind of chose that one.
I think that one I imposed upon you. I said, if you're going to read Ian M. Banks, this is the one.
Okay.
My sense of the book was very much that Ian M. Banks is the kind of writer that wakes up in the morning and writes about whatever the hell's going on in his head that day, and he sort of wraps it up after a year, puts it in one book, and sends it off to the editor. Like, it was just a rambling discourse through these disjointed and strange and completely inconsequential sort of plots and subplots, and I guess that's the point, and that's cool to get it at the end of the day. But like, he could have told us any other story as well, and it might have been exactly the same, right? It almost didn't matter what happened at any time, and that's super weird.
But that was I think that's his style, mind you. Kevin's read a lot more than me, but that's his style of and I think we spoke about this before when we did the meeting for this book, is there's a theme at the end, but there's no typical strong theme of good wins over evil, or there's really no resolve almost, except for the unknown entity leaves, but it also leaves without even caring if it left.
I just
Well-
felt a little bit ripped off when it, like they had there was, I just remember the character who was, kind of alone on the asteroid guarding the mothballed fleet, building, wooden ships or something along those lines. And there's a lot kind of invested in that character, and then, and then that character ends up really not amounting to any sort of real meaningful contribution to the story. I couldn't. To me, I was like, oh, he's gone. Okay, so we're moving on, and so there, I felt like there were a lot of little distractions like that, and in an already complex story, right? And added layers that didn't really add anything to where we were going, and I was never really sure where we were going with it.
Well, at least he was consistent. He did that all the way through.
It is a lot of complexity
No.
for the sake of complexity, right? That's Ian M. Banks, is he likes the complexity in his stories, and definitely if you like that kind of thing, for me it's the second read through where I pick up on the nuance.
Yeah.
I think this is the one book that there's an actual divide
Uh-huh.
between the four of us.
I feel like it was it's a deceptively meaningless book. I get that. Or the point is supposed to be that it is meaningless and as a deep thing. But it also, I accept that there might just be stuff I just wasn't getting, right? Like there's some superstructure to this story probably, right? Where like the details don't matter, but there's some, I did get the feeling that maybe I was just too dumb to get it. Or if I wasn't, then this is the weirdest book I've ever read. Like it was just sort of a rambling tale about nothing in particular.
Well, you had consistency. You had characters from the beginning to the end.
But they were all characters that didn't matter, and we were trying to figure out the whole time why they mattered, and they didn't, I guess.
And the characters are part of telling the story as well, and I mean there was a a pretty big storyline. Like the storyline was there were two ones, right? There was the war with the affront, or the but it was crafted through scheming by culture ships, and then there's the outside of context problem, right? And those are both kind of big space opera style kind of themes that both came out in it, and ultimately I feel like those were the main storylines.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. I think now I do remember that those were the storylines. It's interesting. It's just like, it was like those particular ideas and stories felt like they were just writ so large in some sense that I couldn't sort of get interested in their narrative, right? And there wasn't any human element, I guess. It's something you guys actually said during the meeting, which I think is really interesting about this book, is that the humans aren't the heroes of the story. It's very much AIs and these larger than we could ever imagine beings at this point doing what they do, and the humans are just sort of along for the ride. And we're like flies on the wall that listen to a part of the story that probably doesn't make any sense or have any meaning, precisely because it's happening in the context of like such a large story that
the humans only understand a small part of it, and that's all we're getting.
Yeah,
we're getting a little bit extra from the narrator, but more than anything, we're getting a human's perspective, which is just limited to words, and the AI are not bound by words, and I think he tries to show that.
And it is an interesting thing. Like, what happens in the inevitability when you have the singularity of AI superseding human intelligence, like general intelligence? What happens to humanize? How do you humanize those stories? How do you write sci-fi about that? Because we have these monkey meat sacks in our skull, and so we tend to anthropomorphize everything. So what do you do? Well, you got to throw humans into it in some way, and the nice thing about what Ian M. Banks tries to do it is he figured out a way to do it, and they needed access to this one lady who had experienced this outside of context problem hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but she was in storage on this weird eccentric ship. So they needed another human to go convince this other person to come and get that person out of storage. It was so he tried to humanize an otherwise what would have been a non-human story. I think, and it is complex. Like, there is a lot to it, and it could be overly complex. It's hard for me to kind of tell because I'm no longer kind of what's the word, impartial about Ian M. Banks, because I really liked all of his stuff.
So, Marty, what are we reading?
It's a book called Neverness by David Zindel. Not a terribly well-known book, not terribly popular, but if you look it up and read reviews, it is often compared to Hyperion and to Dune, which are two of my favorite other books. It's a first novel by a young writer at the time from the 80s, where he's very enthusiastic. He's very ebullient. It's a very philosophical and sort of reaching for the stars kind of book. He's unapologetic with his sort of poetry and musings about the deeper meaning of life, and waxing rhapsodic whenever he can. So I kind of love that about it. You might need to be warned a little bit to take him with a grain of salt, though. I just think the world of this book. It's an epic. It's a story about a hero. It goes to the stars. He meets a god. He wins, against great odds. Comes back to Earth with a quest, and it's a book in 3 parts again. Where the first part, boom, like opens really great, builds this beautiful world, takes you out to the far reaches of the galaxy, and then he comes home and he like goes really deep into, like going into the frozen wastelands with living in a cave with. So he's sort of really setting you up for stark contrasts, and that part can drag a little bit, but it is the sort of moral core of the book. And then pow, the last third goes back out to space, and he resolves like big questions. He sets you up to wonder about the meaning of life, and where are they gonna find it, and he does a good job actually resolving all this and giving some answers. So this is a great book, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Well, I got to be honest and say that I knew Marty was going to do this. I think we all did a little bit before now, and I'm a fair way through, and I'm just going to say I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, very much so. It's there's a lot to talk about.
Cool. Another bit of background on this book. It was so he became a writer by when he was a youngish man. He published maybe 2 or 3 short stories, and one of them won the Future Writers of the Future Isaac Asimov or some other prize award. And so it was this 30-page short story called Shanidar, which I got my hands on. And Robert Silverman read this book and called him and said, "Hey, this is a great story. Would you like a book contract to write a novel?" So that's what led to him writing Neverness. And it's a really great short story. It's hard to find. He has a short story compilation on his webpage, davidzindel.com, I'm sure. And it's neat. It's sort of a short story that really creates the entire Neverness world in like the first 2 or 3 pages. He really it's the great example of just like how to do this, how to drop names and words and just sort of, create a world. And it's sort of a story about the centerpiece that becomes the centerpiece of Neverness, like in the middle section of the book where they're living with, primitive ice people in caves. And it's a great short story that has a great twist at the end. And, you can sort of see why he caught the attention of Robert Silverberg, and Neverness is even better. Like, it is a wonderful example of someone taking a great short story and making it all it could be.
Cool.
Looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Sam, have you got some?
I did.
Trivia?
I did come up with 2 trivia questions for this week, for this month, so I thought I'd keep it simple. I thought, what was the first science fiction novel?
Oh,
It's very old.
Well,
really?
I think it's often said that it's Frankenstein, isn't it? So that's Mary Shelley. Frankenstein, I think, qualifies as sci-fi.
Well, that's Marty's correct. I mean, in the sense that that's the popular answer, is that Mary Shelley wrote the first sci-fi, and that's Frankenstein. And but John Crowley has has sort of decreed that a writer in 1616 named Johann Valentin Andre, Johann Valentin Andre's 1616 work, The Chemical Wedding, was in fact the first sci-fi book. So, you know, this, I think it's an answer that's probably up for some debate. And the second trivia question, I thought I'd keep it a little lighter. Fair. Any of you, have any of you heard who Gene Roddenberry's first pick was for Jean-Luc Picard?
Oh,
Somewhere in my brain it's there.
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing this, and I remember saying, "Thank goodness," but I cannot remember who. Oh,
Well,
the
so
urge to Google.
Wow.
Yes. So it's you know, for him, the idea that, you know, a bald English guy would play a French captain rubbed him the wrong way. So
It's not like Gerard Depardieu or something, is it?
Are there any
no,
other
there's
French actors?
well, according to there's again, this is like based off rumor. I'm sure Trekker will have firmer answers for us if anyone hears this. But so Patrick Beauchot was a Belgian actor who's got, you know, he's got a head of hair and, you know, dashing goatee look sort of thing from that time, and that was apparently his first pick. It was either him or an American actor named Stephen Robert Macht, who was apparently a friend of Gene Roddenberry. So, and who does not look like, I don't know, he's kind of, I don't know, it's hard to picture him as the captain. If you Google him, I'll share a link afterwards. But it's at least with this guy, I feel like it was a near miss. So I think we all sort of agree that we landed on the right captain for the next generation. But anyways.
Oh, certainly. You know what I was reminded of, speaking of Dune earlier, Jean-Luc Picard played one of the main characters in that early Dune movie, the David
Gurney
Lynch.
Halleck.
Gurney Halleck, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was reading the comic last
Right.
week. I was trying to remember who it was that Patrick Stewart played, but
Yeah,
he was
that
one
was
of the Harkonnens baddies, wasn't he?
No, Gurney Halleck is one of the Atreides' main men.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
military. He's a young pup. Hello,
Oh,
young pup.
that's right.
He teaches Paul Atreides how to fight, and they
Right.
He would have been in his Shakespeare playing prime at that
Oh
point,
yeah,
wouldn't he?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And he looked exactly like he looks today. Pretty much.
It's not a bad deal if you can get it.
Yeah, no, not bad.
Aw, Patrick Stewart. Young pup. Hello, young pup. That's a terrible impression. Okay, on the next episode, we're talking about David Zindell's Neverness, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing that. I think we should talk a little more about some sci-fi movies and maybe some more graphic novels. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Join us for the next episode of Tales from the Bridge. Thank you for joining us.